As part of the recordings on the ESRS standards as part of the Dutch Accounting Standards Board and EFRAG outreach event, this is the part that relates to the governance standards, where we'll be addressing the two specific governance standards as part of the overall ESRS structure. We have here Eva Eijkelenboom, who will do the presentation. Maybe you can briefly introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Eva Eijkelenboom. I'm working at the Dutch Employers Confederation, and today I will guide you through the topical standards of ESRS on governance. Let's start.
Yes.
There are only two standards on governance, so it should be a short video. Well, this picture might be familiar to you. On the fourth line, you see the topical standards on governance. And there are two standards on governance, as I just mentioned. The first one going into governance, risk management, and internal controls. And the second one is seeing on business conduct. Just as all the other ESRS, the basis of the topical standards of EFRAG is the CSRD, and specifically Article 19b. And there it says undertaking should provide information about governance factors, and then more specific, including information about the role of the undertakings, administrative management, and supervisory bodies, including with regard to sustainability matters, business ethics, political engagement, the management and quality of relationship with business partners, including payment practices, and the internal control and risk management systems in relation to the undertaking's reporting process. And those, this article and these requests are then translated into two topical standards. The first one, G1, the orange block underneath, and the second one, the purple, on business conduct. And the specific coloring of the slide is a bit odd, but the business conduct relates to the orange information request from the CSRD. But we will well, it will be clear when you read through the topical standard. What is a bit different in the topical standards on ESRS compared to the one on the social and the environmental is that the G1, so the topical standard on governance, is actually broader than ESRS 2, covering also governance disclosure requirements. So that's a difference. The difference can be found in the fact that G1 covers, as it says, overall governance, whereas ESRS 2 relates to governance on sustainability matters. And the reason for it is that in order to be able to understand the impact an undertaking can make on sustainability, you should have a clear picture on the overall governance. And therefore, G1, the topical standard, includes overall governance. Of course, there are also governance aspects to be found in the topical standards on S and E, and mostly they're related to, well, for example, policies or requirements, obligations that certain bodies within the undertaking have. So governance, yeah, is intertwined in all standards. When we specifically look at the G1 standard, we see that well, alignment that is aligned with, for example, GRI and SFDR and the accounting directive. So, and that's also not that strange, since governance is already a part of your reporting process. You already provide information on it. And well, what kind of information do you have to provide according to the draft on governance? You have to provide a little bit information on your structure, your overall governance structure. Provide information about are there codes applicable? How do you evaluate processes? How do your internal controls look like? What's your risk management? So more of these kind of information aspects, and a little bit on how does that then work in practice? So for example, what's the performance rate, the attendance rate of supervisory board meetings or something. Those are indicators that should also be mentioned in your sustainability statements on the governance aspect. Well, then there is the second part, the business conduct part, G2, and there you have to also say something about, well, strategy, implementation, and performance, similar setup as the G1 standards, but here you have to go into details on your business conduct culture. What do you aim for? How does that then? How is it implemented in your undertaking? So when we specifically look at anti-competitive behavior, the prevention and detection of corruption, you also have to say something about, well, in your performance matters, be open, for example, about lobbying activities, especially interesting for me, of course, but also how is it within your undertaking on training? How do you train your people on anti-corruption or anti-bribery? Are they aware? And no, all kind of several payment practices. You have to be open about it and provide information in the sustainability report. And well, that was really short on only two governance, topical governance standards. Most of it's probably not that new, but now also part of the ESG requirements.
Eva, thank you for a very clear presentation. And as you just mentioned, a lot of these elements we are already familiar with, although maybe large unlisted companies, for them it's a bigger step as for all of the topics. But nevertheless, what would you see as the biggest challenge when adopting G1 and G2 from a reporting and governance perspective?
Well, I think, and since this is a recap of the outreach event, I can also reflect a bit on the discussion we had there during the day. This led to a discussion on the relevance of the information asked, and there was a debate on it. On the one hand, people said, well, all the listed companies, those who are part of the NFRD or under scope of NFRD or under scope of the Dutch Corporate Governance Code, for them this shouldn't be new, and probably they report on it already, or at least have the systems in place, and then they thought about it and have policies on it. But a large group of companies now, which will now be in scope of CSRD, isn't part of those, or isn't obliged to report under the NFRD or follow the disclosure requirements of disclose about the corporate governance code, and for them it might be relevant to put it in law, and it might help for them. So the relevance of the standards, it was debated about. It's different for different groups of companies. So and if you then ask what's the most difficult or where to start, then it's probably the most easy to start at the G1, the overall governance part, and then look into the specifics.
Yeah, and that means, as you mentioned, for the large companies, you mentioned, well, they could best start with the G1, but what other tips would you give them, or should they be looking at what the listed companies are already reporting, or what other tips would you have to make a good start?
Yeah, since governance and reporting on governance isn't new, it's helpful, or it might be helpful to look into what other companies who currently are reporting on a lot of governance issues report on right now, and how do they report on it. And especially, a tip also in that is look at also the sectors in which, the same sector as which are you active in, that sector might be of the most relevance for you to see. So look at the biggest companies or the large listed companies who currently are reporting a lot, to see what you can learn from them, and then preferably listed companies in your sector. That
and translate that then
to
your own situation, because a family-owned company is in some
totally
governance
different.
aspect quite different from a listed company, but at least using that as a starting point and translating that to your own specific situation.
Yeah, true. It might give you ideas on what to report, on how to report, and of course you have to translate it to your own company to make it more entity specific, and in that way also valuable information for the people who are reading your sustainability statements.
Okay, thank you, very clear. This brings us to the end of our governance section as part of these ESRS related presentations. Thanks for watching, and please also watch the other sections. Thank you.